If the wild doesn't kill you, it claims you. The first thing they noticed wasn't the girl, it was the silence. A forest that usually breathed with wind and distant howls had gone still, like it was listening, watching, waiting. She stood barefoot in the frost, no more than 5'6", her pale skin marked by years of survival, silver eyes reflecting something older than fear. Wolves circled her, massive creatures with thick winter coats, each one capable of tearing through bone, yet none stepped closer. They lowered their heads instead. Not submission, recognition. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now, back to Alara. 10 years earlier, she had been dragged to the edge of Black Hollow Forest, a place every child was warned about in hushed voices. Trees grew thick there, blocking out sunlight even at noon, stretching for miles like a wall between the living and whatever waited beyond. She remembered the cold that night, barely 40 degrees, the ground hard beneath her small hands as she tried to understand why no one would meet her eyes. She's defective, someone had whispered. She won't survive the winter. Her father didn't argue. He couldn't, or wouldn't. When they left her, they didn't look back. For a long time, she thought she would die there, a small, forgotten omega with no pack, no wolf, no future. The first night nearly broke her. Hunger clawed at her stomach. The forest felt too large, too quiet, every crack of a branch echoing like a warning. She cried until her voice disappeared, until even her tears froze against her cheeks. Then something shifted. Not her body. Not yet. Something deeper. A choice. Survive or disappear. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. She learned the rhythm of the forest the way others learned language. Which streams stayed unfrozen. Which paths predators avoided. How to stay still long enough that danger passed her by. Her hands grew rough. Her senses sharpened. Fear didn't leave. It changed shape. The first time she encountered the wolves, she thought it was the end. They stepped from the shadows without sound, eyes glowing faintly in the dark, bodies low and ready. She didn't run. Something told her running would make it worse. So she stood there, trembling, waiting. One wolf approached, larger than the rest, its breath visible in the cold air. It circled her once, slow, deliberate, close enough that she could feel the warmth of its body. Then it stopped, and it didn't attack. It simply watched. Alara lowered her gaze, not in fear, but in instinct she didn't understand. Seconds stretched into something endless. Then the wolf stepped back. The others followed. They vanished into the trees as quietly as they had come. That night, she wasn't alone anymore. Years passed. Seasons carved themselves into her bones. Snowstorms that buried the ground under 3 feet of ice. Summers that stretched the days into endless gold light. She survived all of it. Not as the omega they abandoned. As something else. Something the forest accepted. Something the wolves did not hunt. And now, 10 years later, when the Alpha King himself crossed into Black Hollow tracking a presence he couldn't explain, he expected danger. He expected a rogue. What he didn't expect was her. Kale Thornridge had tracked warlords across frozen valleys and rogue alphas through miles of hostile land. But nothing felt like this. The deeper he moved into Black Hollow, the quieter the world became, until even his own footsteps sounded too loud against the earth. His men stayed behind at the border, not by command, but by instinct, because whatever lay beyond that tree line pressed against their senses in a way they could not explain. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with something unseen. He could smell it faintly, something unfamiliar woven beneath the scent of pine and frost, something that did not belong to any pack he had ever known. It pulled at him, subtle at first, like a distant memory he could not quite grasp, then stronger with every step forward. He should have turned back. A king did not wander alone into unknown territory without reason. Yet reason had already slipped through his fingers the moment he crossed into the forest. His breath slowed as he paused beside a frozen stream, its surface cracked like glass under the weight of winter. The tracks were there again. Barefoot, human, light, precise, almost impossible to follow unless you knew what to look for. No ordinary omega could move like that. No ordinary omega could survive out here for 10 years. His jaw tightened as he crouched, fingers brushing the edge of a print no longer than 8 inches. It was fresh. She was close. A branch shifted somewhere behind him. Not loud, not careless, deliberate. Kale rose slowly, every sense sharpening, the world narrowing to the space between one breath and the next. He did not reach for a weapon. Something told him that would be the wrong move. Instead, he waited. Silence stretched. Then he felt it. Not a sound, not movement, a presence, close enough that the air changed, like standing near a fire you could not yet see. He turned, and there she was. For a moment, neither of them moved. She stood several yards away, half hidden between the trees, her posture still, balanced, like she could disappear into the forest at any second. Her hair fell wild over her shoulders, dark strands catching faint light through the canopy. Pale skin, marked by time, by weather, by survival. But it was her eyes that held him. Silver, not the muted gray of most wolves. Brighter, sharper, alive in a way that made his chest tighten without warning. She did not bow. She did not speak. She simply watched him, head tilted slightly, like she was trying to decide what he was. Kale exhaled slowly, careful not to break whatever fragile moment held them in place. "You have been out here a long time," he said, his voice steady, low, the tone he used when calming a restless crowd. No response. Her gaze flickered, not to his face, but to his hands, his stance, the way he held himself. Assessing, measuring. He had seen that look before. Not in Omegas. In Predators. A faint shift in the trees behind her drew his attention for half a second. Wolves. At least 4, maybe more, their forms barely visible through the shadows. Watching. Waiting. Not aggressive. Protective. He understood then. She was not surviving among them. She belonged to them. Kale took a single step forward. Not enough to threaten. Enough to test. Her reaction was instant. Muscles tensed. Breath caught. Not fear. Readiness. Yet she did not retreat. The bond hit him without warning. It was not gentle. It was not subtle. It crashed through him like a force he could not control, tightening in his chest, pulling his focus to her with an intensity that made everything else fade. Mate. The word did not come from his mind. It came from somewhere deeper. Instinct. Truth. His breath faltered, just for a second. She noticed. Her expression shifted, confusion flickering across her features, like she felt something too, but did not understand it. Kale steadied himself, every instinct urging him forward, to close the distance, to claim what the bond demanded. But one look at her told him that would be a mistake. She was not part of his world. Not anymore. Whatever she had become out here, it did not answer to King's. "I am not here to harm you," he said quietly. The words felt strange in his mouth. Unnecessary. She did not respond to language the way others did. But she did not leave. Instead, after a long moment, she stepped closer. One step, then another. Slow. Controlled. Until only a few feet remained between them. Close enough that he could see the subtle rise and fall of her breath. Close enough that the pull between them became almost unbearable. Her hand lifted, hesitant, like the motion itself was unfamiliar. Then, with quiet certainty, she placed it against his chest. Everything stopped. The forest, the cold, the distance between who he was and what he felt. His heart stuttered under her touch, the bond igniting fully, undeniable now. She froze, eyes widening slightly, as if she felt it too, something vast and unexplainable rushing through her veins. For the first time since he had seen her, she looked uncertain, and Kale realized something that shifted everything. She had no idea what he was to her. Her hand did not leave his chest, but her expression changed, curiosity giving way to something sharper, more instinctive, as if her body recognized a shift her mind could not yet understand. Kale remained still, though every part of him urged movement, urged him to close the distance, to hold on to the connection that had just ignited between them. The bond pulsed again, stronger this time, a steady rhythm beneath his ribs that matched the faint tremor in her fingertips. She felt it. He could see it in the way her breathing altered, shallow for a moment, then deeper, controlled, like she was adjusting to something new. Slowly, she tilted her head, studying him in a way that made it clear she was not seeing a king, not seeing power or rank, only something unfamiliar that demanded her attention. A faint sound broke the stillness behind her, low and almost questioning. The wolves. They had moved closer, their presence pressing in from the edges of the clearing, not threatening, but alert. Their eyes shifted between Cale and the girl, waiting for a signal he could not interpret. She glanced back at them briefly, a silent exchange passing between them that carried meaning without words. Then she returned her focus to him. That was when he understood. She was not alone out here. She had never been alone. Whatever connection she shared with those wolves, it ran deeper than instinct. It was loyalty. It was belonging. Something his world had taken from her long ago. Cale exhaled slowly, forcing himself to remain calm, measured. You should not be out here alone, he said, though even as the words left his mouth, he knew how wrong they sounded. This forest was not a place she had been lost in. It was a place she had claimed. Her brow furrowed slightly, the tone of his voice reaching her even if the meaning did not fully land. She withdrew her hand, not abruptly, but with a quiet hesitation, like she was reluctant to break contact. The moment her fingers left him, the absence was immediate. The bond did not disappear. It stretched, a thin, invisible thread pulling between them, urging reconnection. Her gaze flickered again, this time sharper, more focused. She took a small step back, testing distance, watching his reaction. Cale did not move. He let her set the pace, understanding now that any sudden action could break whatever fragile trust existed between them. Seconds passed. Then she turned slightly, her attention shifting toward the deeper forest. Another sound. Faint. Human. Voices carried on the wind, distant but unmistakable. Cale's expression hardened, his senses sharpening instantly. His men, or worse, others had followed. The presence of outsiders in this place would not go unnoticed. The wolves reacted first, their bodies tensed, heads lifting, ears forward. A low vibration filled the air, not a threat, but a warning. She felt it too. Her posture changed in an instant, softness replaced by readiness, her entire form aligning with the forest around her. She moved then, fast, silent, stepping between Cale and the direction of the sound. Not hiding, protecting. The realization hit him harder than the bond had. She was placing herself between him and potential danger, not because she trusted him, but because something in her refused to let harm come to him. Even without understanding why. Cale's jaw tightened, conflict rising within him. His duty pulled one way, toward the approaching voices, toward the world he ruled. The bond pulled another, anchoring him here, with her. She glanced back at him once, a brief look, questioning, uncertain, like she was deciding whether he would follow or stay. Then she stepped back again, retreating toward the trees, her movements fluid, controlled, ready to disappear if needed. The wolves shifted with her, forming a silent barrier, their presence guiding her path. Cale took a breath, deep and steady. He had come into this forest searching for answers. What he found was far more dangerous. Not because of what she was, but because of what she meant. The bond pulsed once more, insistent now, undeniable. He stepped forward, not toward the voices, toward her. And for the first time, she did not step away. She did not step away, and that was the first real answer she had ever given him. The distance between them closed to barely 3 feet, close enough that Cale could feel the faint warmth of her skin despite the cold air hanging at just above freezing. Her eyes searched his again, slower this time, less guarded, as if something inside her had shifted from instinct to curiosity. Behind them, the voices grew clearer, still far, but moving in the wrong direction, deeper into a place they did not belong. Cale turned his head slightly, listening, calculating distance, speed, intent. At least 3 men, maybe 4, their steps uneven, not trained for this terrain. Hunters or scouts, not his royal guard. That meant risk. That meant time was running short. When he looked back at her, she was already watching him, reading the tension in his posture the way she read the forest itself. She understood something was coming. She just did not know what. A low sound left one of the wolves, softer than before, almost questioning. She did not look back this time. Her focus stayed on Cale, waiting. For what? He was not sure. A decision, maybe. A signal. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. Others are coming, he said, keeping his tone calm, even though he knew the words might mean nothing to her. Still, something in his voice reached her. Her shoulders tightened slightly, her body shifting into readiness again, not fear, but awareness. She glanced once toward the sound, then back to him, as if weighing two paths. Stay or disappear. Protect or retreat. The bond pulsed again, stronger now, urging connection, urging trust, even where none had been built. Cale did not reach for her. He did not command. He simply held her gaze and let the truth settle between them. He was not like the others who would come. He would not chase her. He would not force her. For a long second, nothing happened. Then she moved. Not away. Not fully toward him either. She circled slightly, stepping to his side instead of facing him directly, her body angled so she could see both him and the direction of the approaching voices. It was not submission. It was positioning. A silent agreement. She would not leave him exposed. The wolves shifted with her, spreading out in a loose arc, their presence forming a boundary that felt both protective and controlled. Cale felt something tighten in his chest that had nothing to do with the bond. Respect. She was not a creature of chaos. She was deliberate, thoughtful in a way that had been shaped by survival, not taught by any pack. The forest responded to her, not the other way around. The voices grew louder now, close enough that words began to separate from the noise. Fragments carried through the trees. Tracks, fresh, something moved through here. Cale's expression darkened. Outsiders, then. Not his men. Not anyone who should have been this deep. He stepped forward slightly, enough to place himself just ahead of her, not blocking her, but sharing the line of sight. She noticed. Her head tilted again, that same quiet curiosity flickering back. He did not look at her this time. His focus stayed forward, his presence shifting into something unmistakable. Authority. Even here, even alone, it settled around him like a second skin. The bond reacted instantly. She felt it. Her breath caught, subtle but real, as if some part of her recognized the weight of what stood beside her. Not a threat. Something larger. Something she had never been taught to understand. The first figure broke through the trees about 30 yards away, pushing branches aside, unaware of what waited beyond. He stopped the second he saw them. Not the wolves. Not the forest. Them. Cale and the girl standing side by side in a clearing that suddenly felt much smaller. Silence fell again, heavy, expectant. The man's eyes widened slightly, confusion flashing across his face. He had expected prey. He had found something else entirely. Cale did not move. He did not speak. He did not need to. The message was already clear. This place was not empty, and neither was she. Beside him, the girl did not retreat. She stood her ground, her presence steady, her eyes locked on the stranger with a quiet intensity that did not belong to any Omega they had ever known. For the first time, Cale realized something else, something that shifted the balance of everything he thought he understood. She was not just surviving out here. She was becoming something the world beyond this forest was not ready to face. The man froze at the edge of the clearing, his breath visible in the cold air, his eyes darting between Cale and the girl as if trying to make sense of something that refused to fit into any story he had been told. He took one cautious step forward, boots crunching, softly over frozen ground, then stopped again when the wolves shifted almost in unison, their bodies lowering just enough to signal a boundary he could not cross. Easy, he muttered under his breath, though it was unclear if he was speaking to them or to himself. Two more figures appeared behind him, pushing through the trees with less care, their movements louder, less aware. They slowed the moment they saw what stood ahead. Silence settled, thick and heavy, stretching between both sides like a line no one wanted to break. Cale did not turn to acknowledge them. His attention remained forward, his presence steady, controlled, unmistakable. Even without a crown, without guards, there was no hiding what he was. Authority pressed outward from him in quiet waves, shaping the air itself. The first man seemed to feel it. His posture shifted, shoulders tightening, gaze lowering just slightly, instinct overriding confusion. "We did not know this territory was claimed," he said carefully, his voice carrying across the space with forced calm. Claimed. The word hung there, uncertain, incomplete, because what stood beside Cale did not resemble any claim they understood. The girl did not move. Her weight balanced evenly, her breathing slow, her attention fixed on the strangers with a focus that was not fear, not aggression, but something far more unsettling. Awareness without hesitation. Cale finally spoke, his voice low, even, carrying a quiet finality. "You are not meant to be here." No raised tone. No threat. Yet the meaning settled deep, undeniable. One of the men behind the first shifted, uneasy, glancing at the wolves, then back at Kale. "We are just passing through," he said, though the uncertainty in his voice gave him away. They had followed something. Track signs. Curiosity that had led them too far. Kale's gaze did not waver. "Then you will leave." The forest seemed to lean into the moment, the wind still, the space between breaths stretching longer than it should. The girl's head tilted slightly, her attention flickering to Kale as he spoke, as if she was beginning to map meaning to his tone, to his presence, to the way others responded to him. Something in her expression shifted again, not fully understanding, but recognizing pattern. The first man nodded once, slow, deliberate. "We will go." He did not argue. He did not test the line. He turned, stepping back the way he had come, his companions following quickly, their earlier confidence gone, replaced by something quieter, more cautious. Within seconds, the forest swallowed them again, their presence fading into distant sound, then nothing at all. Silence returned. Real silence this time. Kale exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his shoulders, though not completely. He did not turn immediately. He waited, giving the moment time to settle, giving her space to react in her own way. When he finally glanced at her, she was already watching him, her eyes sharper now, more focused, as if something important had just taken shape in her understanding. She stepped closer, not cautious this time, intentional. The distance between them closed again, the invisible thread of the bond pulling tighter with every inch. Her gaze searched his face, slower, more deliberate than before. Not just curiosity, recognition beginning to form. She reached out again, her hand lifting with less hesitation, more certainty. This time, when her fingers pressed against his chest, she did not pull away. The bond surged, stronger than before, steady, grounding, undeniable. Kale felt it settle deep within him, no longer a sudden force, but a constant presence, like a second heartbeat. Her expression changed. Not confusion now. Not entirely. Something softer, quieter, like the first flicker of trust breaking through years of instinct. She leaned in slightly, just enough that her forehead nearly brushed his shoulder, her posture no longer defensive, no longer ready to flee. The wolves behind her relaxed, their bodies easing, the tension draining from the clearing as if they, too, recognized the shift. Kale did not move. He did not reach for her, did not risk breaking what had just been given. He simply stood there, allowing her to choose the space between them. And for the first time since he had found her, she did not look like she belonged only to the forest. She looked like someone standing on the edge of something new, something uncertain, something that might pull her away from the only world she had ever known. The moment lingered longer than it should have, her hand resting over his heart as if she was memorizing the rhythm beneath her palm, as if that steady beat was something new, something worth holding on to. Kale did not speak. Words felt too small for what was happening, too fragile for a connection that had been forged without language, without permission. Her fingers shifted slightly, pressing more firmly against his chest, testing the reality of him, testing the bond that continued to pulse between them. It did not fade. It deepened. Her breathing slowed to match his, her body aligning with his presence in a way that felt instinctive rather than learned. For a brief second, her eyes closed. Not fully, just enough to feel, just enough to let whatever had been building inside her settle into place. When she opened them again, something had changed. The sharp edge of survival was still there, but beneath it, something softer had begun to take root. Not weakness, awareness. Kale felt it too. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. She was no longer deciding whether to stay or run. She was deciding what he meant. A faint breeze moved through the clearing, carrying the scent of pine and cold earth, along with something else now woven into it. Her scent. It was not strong like others he had known, not overwhelming or obvious. It was quiet, clean, like frost under moonlight, and it wrapped around him in a way that made the bond tighten further, anchoring him where he stood. She drew her hand back slowly, though this time the distance did not feel like loss. The connection remained, stretched between them like something invisible but unbreakable. She took a step back, then another, her gaze never leaving his, as if she was measuring the space, learning how far she could move without breaking whatever held them together. The wolves shifted behind her again, calmer now, their earlier tension replaced by a watchful stillness. One of them moved closer to her side, brushing lightly against her leg. She did not look down. She did not need to. Her hand dropped briefly to the wolf's head, fingers resting there in a quiet gesture of reassurance. Not dominance. Not command. Trust. Kale watched carefully, absorbing every detail, every movement. This was not a creature shaped only by instinct. This was someone who had built her own world from nothing and learned to survive within it. Asking her to leave it behind would not be simple. It might not even be possible. She turned slightly then, her attention shifting toward the deeper forest once more, but this time she did not disappear into it. Instead, she glanced back at him, holding his gaze for a long second that felt deliberate, like a question she did not know how to ask. Kale understood more than he should have. Not because of words. Because of the bond. Because of the way it responded to her hesitation, to the quiet pull of something new forming between them. He took a step forward, slow, careful, closing part of the distance she had just created. Not enough to crowd her. Enough to answer. "You do not have to choose yet," he said quietly, his voice steady, grounding. The words were simple, but the meaning carried more. He was not asking her to follow, not demanding she leave. He was giving her space. Time. Something no one had given her before. Her head tilted again, that familiar motion returning, but softer now, less guarded. She did not fully understand his words, but she understood his tone. The absence of pressure. The lack of threat. It mattered. She stepped closer again, slower this time, as if testing not just the space, but the trust forming between them. The bond responded instantly, a quiet warmth spreading through both of them, steady, reassuring. She stopped within arm's reach, her posture relaxed in a way it had not been before, her presence no longer split between him and the forest. For the first time, she was not dividing her attention. She was choosing to stay in this moment. Kale felt something settle within him, something deeper than instinct, deeper than duty. Certainty, not of what would happen next, but of what mattered now. The forest remained around them, unchanged, ancient and watchful. The wolves stayed close, silent, witnesses to something they could not name. And in the center of it all, the line between two worlds had begun to blur, not with force, not with conflict, but with a quiet, undeniable pull that neither of them could ignore. The forest did not stay quiet for long, because something had shifted the moment she chose not to disappear, and the world beyond the trees was already beginning to respond. Kale felt it before he heard it, a distant ripple through the bond, not from her, but from something tied to him, something calling him back. His pack, his territory. The responsibilities he had left behind were not patient things. They would come looking. Alara sensed the change instantly. Her posture straightened, her attention snapping toward the edge of the forest where the wind carried unfamiliar scents. Not the careless steps from before. These were measured, controlled, many. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, the quiet calm from moments ago giving way to alert focus. She glanced at him, not confused this time, but searching, as if asking a question without words. "What is coming?" Kale held her gaze, steady, grounded, though tension coiled beneath the surface. "My people," he said softly, knowing she would not understand the words, but hoping she would feel the truth behind them. She did. The bond reacted differently now, not just pulling them together, but revealing contrast. Him and them. Safe and unknown. Her head tilted again, slower this time, her instincts sorting through something more complex than survival. The wolves behind her reacted next, their bodies tightening, shifting into a formation that was no longer passive. They were not afraid. They were preparing, not to attack, to protect her. That was when Kale realized the problem. His arrival had been one thing, one presence, one unknown variable she could study. But a group, a pack, that was something entirely different. Too much, too fast. Alara stepped back, just one step, but it was enough to change everything. The fragile space between them stretched again, not breaking, but thinning under pressure. Her eyes moved past him, tracking the invisible line where the others would emerge. Her breathing changed, faster now, not panic, but calculation. The forest had always given her options. Paths escape. This was new. Kale felt the shift and made a decision instantly. He stepped forward, closing the distance she had created, not forcefully, but with quiet certainty. He needed her to stay, not for him, for what was coming. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to react, to pull away if she chose. She did not. His fingers brushed her wrist, light, barely there, but enough to ground her attention back on him. The bond surged at the contact, stronger than before, warm, steady, anchoring. Her gaze snapped back to his face, her focus narrowing again, the outside world fading just enough. "Stay," he said, his voice low, firm, not a command, but a request layered with something deeper. She stilled, completely. The wolves hesitated, their tension wavering as her reaction shifted. For a moment, it looked like she might pull away, might vanish into the forest as she had done countless times before. But she did not move. Instead, her fingers turned slightly, brushing against his hand in return. Not by accident. A choice. The bond responded instantly, stabilizing, calming the sharp edge of her instincts just enough to hold her in place. The sound of movement broke through the trees seconds later. This time it was clear, organized, controlled. Kale's guards stepped into view, their formation tight, their presence unmistakable. They stopped the moment they saw him. Relief flickered across their faces for a fraction of a second, then confusion took its place just as quickly. Because he was not alone. None of them spoke. None of them moved forward. They knew better. The tension in the clearing was different now. Not hostile. Not yet. But fragile. Every movement mattered. Kale did not turn to them immediately. His focus remained on her, on the way her body had gone still again, not from fear, but from the weight of too many unknowns pressing in at once. This was the moment that would decide everything. Whether she would run, or whether she would stay long enough to let him bring her into a world that had once cast her out. Her grip on his hand tightened. Just slightly, her eyes flickering between him and the figures beyond, uncertainty breaking through the control she had built over years of survival. And for the first time since he had found her, Kale understood that this was not about claiming her. This was about earning the right to stand beside her without becoming another reason she had to disappear. No one moved at first, not Kale, not the guards, not even the wolves, because the moment had become something fragile, something that could fracture with a single wrong step. The air felt tighter now, colder, as if the forest itself was watching how this would unfold. Alara's fingers remained curled around his, not gripping tightly, but not letting go either, her body caught between instinct and something new she did not yet understand. The guards held their ground roughly 20 yards away, their formation steady, disciplined, but their eyes betrayed them. Confusion, shock, a quiet disbelief at what they were seeing. Their alpha king, standing in the heart of forbidden territory, hand in hand with a girl who should not exist. One of them shifted slightly, the movement small but enough to ripple through the clearing. Alara reacted instantly. Her shoulders tensed, her weight shifting, her gaze snapping toward the source with sharp precision. The wolves followed her lead, their bodies lowering just a fraction, a silent warning that spread like a current through the trees. Kale felt the shift before it escalated. He stepped forward just enough to place himself between her and the guards, not blocking her, but redirecting the tension. His presence settled like a barrier, steady, controlled, absolute. "Stand down," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. The effect was immediate. His guards stilled, their instincts overriding their questions, their bodies easing back into stillness. They did not lower their guard completely, but they did not advance either. That was enough. Alara's gaze flickered back to him, searching, her breath still slightly elevated, her instincts not yet settled. The bond pulsed again, steady, reassuring, anchoring her to the moment instead of letting her retreat into the forest. Kale turned his head slightly, just enough to meet the eyes of the closest guard. "No one moves," he added, quieter now, but no less firm. The guard nodded once, understanding more than the words themselves. Whatever this was, it mattered. Kale returned his attention to her, lowering his hand slowly but not pulling away, giving her the choice to release him first. She did not. Instead, her grip shifted, her fingers sliding slightly against his as if testing the connection again, grounding herself in it. Her eyes moved between him and the figures beyond, uncertainty still present, but no longer overwhelming. Something inside her was holding, choosing not to run, choosing to stay. The wolves responded next. Their posture eased gradually, the tension draining in careful increments, though their eyes remained fixed on the guards, watchful, protective. They would not fully relax. Not yet. Kale understood that. Trust was not something that could be given in a moment. It had to be built, piece by piece, action by action. He took a slow breath, then another, keeping his movements deliberate, predictable. "They will not harm you," he said softly. His voice meant only for her now. The words might not carry meaning, but the tone did. Calm, certain. She studied him closely, her gaze lingering on his face, his posture, the way the others responded to him without question. She was learning, not language, power, influence, the invisible lines that shaped how the world beyond the forest moved. Her head tilted again, slower now, thoughtful, as if something was beginning to connect. She took a small step forward, not away from him, toward the guards. The movement was subtle, but it changed everything. Kale felt the shift immediately, the risk, the possibility. He did not stop her. He did not pull her back. He let her move, trusting her instinct, trusting the bond that had brought them to this point. The guards noticed. Their posture tightened again, not in aggression, but in readiness, unsure how to respond to something they had never been trained to face. Alara stopped after a single step, her attention fixed on them, her expression unreadable. She was not approaching as prey, not as subordinate. She was observing, measuring, deciding. Then, slowly, she looked back at Kale, not for permission, for confirmation. He met her gaze, steady, unwavering, and gave the only answer he could. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply stayed exactly where he was. And that was enough. She turned back to the guards, her posture settling, her presence no longer divided between two worlds, but standing at the edge of both. The bond pulsed once more, stronger than ever, not just connecting them, but holding the moment together. And for the first time, the space between the forest and the world beyond it did not feel like a barrier. It felt like a threshold. She stood at the edge of two worlds, and for the first time, neither one rejected her. The forest remained still behind her, ancient and patient, the place that had shaped her into something unbreakable. Ahead, the unfamiliar waited, structured, controlled, filled with rules she had never learned. Alara did not move for several seconds, her breath steady, her eyes fixed on the figures who watched her with a mix of caution and disbelief. The wolves behind her stayed close, not crowding, not pressing, but present, a silent reminder of everything she had survived. Kale did not step forward this time. He did not guide her. He simply stood beside her, close enough that she could feel him, far enough that she could still choose. The bond between them held steady, no longer pulling, no longer demanding, just there, constant, like a quiet truth neither of them could deny. One of the guards lowered his gaze first. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but it shifted the weight of the moment. Respect, not for her title, because she had none, not for her place, because she had never been given one, for her presence, for what she was. The others followed, slower, uncertain, but understanding enough to mirror the change. Alara noticed. Her head tilted slightly, her attention sharpening, absorbing the reaction, mapping it the way she had learned to read the forest. This was different. No threat, no dismissal, something else. Kale saw the shift in her expression, the quiet recognition forming. Beneath the surface, he took a breath, then stepped forward, closing the distance between her and the world beyond by just a fraction. Not enough to push, enough to stand with her. "They see you," he said softly, knowing she would not grasp the words, but hoping she would feel the meaning carried through the bond. Her gaze flickered toward him, then back to the guards. She did not retreat. She did not lower her eyes. She simply stood there, steady, grounded, her presence filling the clearing in a way that no one could ignore. The wolves behind her eased further, their bodies relaxing, their watchfulness shifting from defense to observation. They were not pulling her back. They were letting her decide. Kale's chest tightened slightly at that realization. Even they understood. This was her choice. Alara took another step forward. Small, careful, but deliberate. The space between her and the guards narrowed to less than 15 yards now. close enough that the difference between them was no longer distance, but understanding. She stopped again, her posture balanced, her attention steady. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand. Not in defense, not in warning. Just raised it, palm open, fingers relaxed. It was not something she had been taught. It was instinct shaped into something new. The guards did not move. They did not reach for anything. They simply watched, their earlier confusion settling into something quieter, something closer to acceptance. Cale felt the bond respond again, not with intensity this time, but with a quiet warmth that spread through him, steady and sure. This was not the moment of claiming, not the moment of declaration. This was something far more important. Recognition. Alara lowered her hand slowly, her gaze lingering on the guards for a second longer before returning to Cale. There was no fear in her eyes now, no immediate instinct to run, only a quiet question that did not need words. What happens next? Cale met her gaze, steady, unwavering, the answer already forming in the space between them. Not control, not force, time, choice, something she had never been given before. He did not speak. He did not move to lead her away. He simply stayed where he was, offering presence instead of direction. The forest remained behind her. The world waited ahead. And in that moment, Alara stood exactly where she was meant to be, not as something broken, not as something lost, but as someone who had survived long enough to choose her own path. The bond between them pulsed once more, soft and certain, not pulling her forward, not holding her back, but reminding her of one simple truth. She was no longer alone.